What's up, world? How y'all doing? I've been thinking about for a while doing little videos, information and things like that, and I wasn't really sure when I would do it. But yesterday some stuff came up and I said, what better time than to start? All right. So I go to a family gathering and everything like that, and I meet up one of my cousins who we commonly communicate on Facebook. And he's like, yo, I'm surprised you hadn't checked out this new status I made and everything like that. So I told him I do when I get home. I get home and it's talking about the drug war in the US, like the war on drugs. I think he said it was a documentary that he was watching or whatever. So I go, I start watching it and I start to see what's going on. I'm like, okay, I see what they're doing. I see what they're doing. And it got me to thinking. Now, most of the population in the United States of men and women, but mostly men that are locked up in the prison system are blacks and Hispanics. Now, those who are white that are locked up probably are those sketchy guys that will end up hanging around the blacks and the Hispanics. Just like if you're from the hood or from an urban area, you see the white people that hang around us. They don't really get the type of common white respect you will see amongst the more elite, the rich people. They get their whole disgusting look. In fact, I think some of them get treated worse because it's kind of like, how can you find yourself around these unruly and unclean like types? But anyway, I got to thinking about something. If you know your amendments like you should know your amendments and how the Constitution and all of these things work, you would know that it makes sense for the government to funnel drugs into these urban areas and these communities, and also to funnel drugs and alcohol into these communities in order to shut these men down. But why? Think about it. Okay, they let us free. We're free. Us is free now. But are we really free? And if we are truly free and they want to continue slavery, but based on their own constitution, they can't, then how do they do it? Well, if you read the full 13th Amendment, which they don't teach you in school, they usually only teach you the part about, oh, the slaves are free, no more slavery. But it's like, oh, no more slavery in the United States or any territories that we own or operate in, comma, or semicolon. It's something else there, like dot dot dot, unless it's in a form of punishment in which the person that did bad, the criminal, will be locked up, and he can, now that right is no longer there. So if you get locked up and go to prison, you're no longer a free man, not by the sense of, oh, you're locked up in prison serving time. You're no longer a free man, as in you now can be a slave. They can legally and constitutionally enslave you and have you perform slave-like labor, just like they did black people when they got here way back in the day. You basically, as a criminal, as a convict, have now been returned to the plantation, is what I'm saying. And based on the Constitution, which everybody likes to run to the Constitution. Now, based on the Constitution, which you probably would try to use to protect you, you're a slave. And they can use you that way. Period. You have no rights. And even when they let you free, what do? They make things and they create laws that make it somewhat impossible for you to even go and do better for yourself, which means most likely you will return to the crime which you were committing in the first place, and return where? Back into the judicial system, which means you are now a slave again. So, thinking about these things, I was like, it makes a lot of sense. It really makes a heck of a lot of sense. You, you being those who create laws. These are mostly white people. I really hate to bring race into something, but let's be honest. Racism is going to forever exist because race is what drives the world. I don't want it to be that way. I really despise it being that way, but let's just be honest. That's what it is. So, you take these white guys who create these laws, who slipped up and let a white man, Abraham Lincoln, whom I truly have no true respect for, and I'll make another video about him a little bit later down the line. And niggas are free. And we told them based on the Constitution that we're not gonna have y'all as slaves no more. But let's add in this clause. Now, how do we get them to further work and get back into the system so that we can abuse this? Well, technically it's not abuse because it was there. It's there for you to read just as clear as day. So how do we use this to our advantage and now get them back into the system? Okay, we create laws against certain things, and then we create situations and we put it on them, and now they fall into the situation, therefore they fall into our system and they're allowed to return to us the way that we want them in the first place. So yeah, where do you think drugs come from? Think about it. Drugs come from places that most black people, and not just talking about people in the hood, but just most black people in general, probably would never visit, and we really aren't going to. Where do you think they import opium from? This drug business and stuff like that is not something that we created. It's something that was dropped in our laps. Think about it. Just really consider it. Your whole life you've been living in a place with no holes. No holes at all. None. But all of a sudden you look up and here's a bunch of holes. Now you have to fill in these holes. You're not educated. When they first let us go, we were uneducated. Why you think a lot of black people end up working as slaves again? They went right back to what they knew, working on the farm, working for master. Even though you were free now and he technically had to pay you, you were right back where you started, just a tad bit better off. But, okay, not educated, you had no skill other than working on the farm. Since you weren't educated, you couldn't get a real decent job, even something basic like working in a little store. You couldn't count, you can't add, do basic things, you can't read, you're illiterate. So that's not going to work for you. So getting an education doesn't really work because you don't have basic skills. And then since you were black, they surely weren't trying to give it to you. So what do you turn to? Probably either these low paying, low budget jobs, which still exist, working in the field, working in these factories, these things that are dead end jobs, or you turn to a life of crime. And in a life of crime, you end up where? Back in the system, able to be treated as a slave once again. You don't really hear too much about these upper level black Americans, upper level white people dealing with these type of issues because they have money. They have the means in which to provide. So it's whatever. These are the guys that are the Uncle Toms and the old preppy guy and your Harvard graduate, Ivy League. These guys, the ones that get picked on, the black guys that get picked on in high school for being a nerd, they're not targeted. It's us. It's the guys that come from the bad neighborhood, from the urban community, the ones from the inner city. And there's so much other stuff, but specifically talking about this war on drugs, bringing it more forward to nowadays, yeah, they feed it to you. It's a lot of things that I'm going to discuss later on in later videos that's going to tie into why drugs and things of this nature are so prominent in our system. We as people would like to think, okay, only decisions can be made. You can do whatever it is you want to do in life and da 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 da. Now, if that was true, if it was that easy, as simple as we really made it, sure, there's some lazy people. There's some people out there that would just choose and just settle to sell drugs. It's whatever. But for the most part, if it was that easy, most of us wouldn't. A lot of these guys turn to this because that's all they have. So think about that for a minute. Really consider the fact, if all you have in order to survive is this life of crime, what do? You do it. And where do you end up? In the system. Where what? They want you. Subscribe, check me out, pass the word around. I'm trying my best, Holla at your boy, DSD Inform.